Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. After a long pause where we focus on other topics, today we are resuming our tafsir lecture series. We restart with surat Layl Chapter 92 of the Quran. Layl means the night. As we've done in the past, we will let the Quran tafsir itself, explain itself, without going to outside sources as much as possible. And as usual, our aim is to highlight the core message of this chapter. This surah chapter starts with several oats, swears, as usually the Meccan chapters do. The core message of this chapter revolves around man's free will and the consequences of his decision and actions. Throughout the surah, we see the Quran builds the case for each path within a framework of scenes taken from the universe and human nature. This surah states emphatically the basic facts of action and reward. With this introduction, we now start with first three verses. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى. By the night when it covers. Wav here in the beginning of each verse is wav of oath, not wav of connection, atf. It is very similar to the prior chapter, Surat al-Shams, where similarly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts with a number of oaths. The question is, when Allah swears by something of His creation, like the sun, the moon, the night, or the day, heavens or earth, can we swear by any of these? There is a prophetic saying that anyone who swears by anything other than Allah, he has committed shirk, has associated partners with God. Because when we swear, we are taking a witness. When you say, by God, wallahi, I did not do it, you're taking God as witness that you did not do it. Who besides Allah can be everywhere and be witness to everything? Attributes such as all-knowing, all-aware, all-seeing belong only to Allah Azza wa Jal. Many things we do in secret, or where people who are affected are absent. But Allah sees all that we do or witnesses all that we do. Hence, the prophetic hadith says anyone who swears by anything other than Allah, he has committed shirk. You can then apply this discussion to any verse in the Quran that starts with wav of oath. Now, Allah can swear to His creation because all creation come from His power, knowledge, and wisdom. However, His creation has no right to swear except to Him. As such, when one appears in any court of law, he can only swear to God and none other. Swearing too much is not good for us anyway, because it shows lack of confidence in our words, hence wanting to force it through by swearing so the other side accept it from us. On the other hand, Allah swears to His signs that represent His power and majesty, and of course there is none above Him. He also wants to say His signs are honorable and must be recognized. When He mentions the sun, day, night, heavens, etc., these are all part of His grace and bounty. By the night, when it yaksha, covers, enshrouds, conceals, what does it cover? Any living and non-living thing on earth. Here the night concealing means not the sunset, but rather an hour or so after, when total darkness appears. وَالنَّهَارَ إِذَا تَجَلَّى, by the day in full splendor. In contrast to verse 1, this verse is talking about the brightness of the day in full brilliance. In other words, verses 1 and 2 talk about two opposite sides of the 24-hour day at their peaks, but come as pair in a 24-hour period. Prior surah, Ash-Shams, puts it in the context of the sun and the moon, followed by opposites of other categories. The night and the day are two general phenomena which carry a certain message with which they inspire human hearts. The human soul is automatically affected by the cycle of the night and its curtain, and the day and its splendid brightness. This continuous succession of night and day speaks about the universe, its mysterious secrets and phenomena over which man has no control. It suggests that there is a power which controls time in the universe. وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, and by He who created the male and female. Here we see the pairing between the male and female, where the verse swears by creation of male and female, which represents opposites that complement each other, whose similarities and differences together bring about life. In our case, human life. If it was all males only or all females only, the race could not continue. Both male and female are required to start and complete the life cycle. This verse completes the contrast both in the general atmosphere of the surah and in fact it emphasizes it. Hence, Allah is swearing by His essence, which is the Creator, Khaliq. What do these three verses want to conclude after mentioning the two pairs of day, night, and male and female? The next verse says it. إِنَّ سَعْيُكُمْ لَشَتَّى. Indeed, your efforts are diverse. Meaning, it's not like there's no difference in mankind's deeds and whatever they do is not important. Each end with their own consequences, some good and some bad. Some people's deeds are shining bright like the day, while others are dark, like darkness of the night, as signified by verse 2. One subtle point here not to miss. Night and day do not have free will. They will do what they were created to do. However, while human males and females do not have any free will in coming to this world, once they arrive, they do have free will in their actions. Our actions are total sum of what we do, a combination of good and evil. The verse says, striving of human beings is diverse, since the roads they follow lead to different ends. Their reward or consequences are also diverse. Good is not the same as evil. Next several verses expand on these and want to say because mankind has free will, then outcome of his actions can include both opposites like the day and night. So good and evil outcomes are considered as humans' output as a result of his free will. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى, as for he who gives and fears Allah, is God conscious or keeps his duty to Allah. وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and believes in the truth of the ultimate good. فَسَنُيَسِّرْهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, we will ease his way toward ease. First, it talks about one who gives generously, as giving is one of the highest virtues in Islam, which the Quran reminds us about throughout. Some have said giving here is not limited to wealth only, money only. It can also include giving time, knowledge, or anything that fulfills someone's need. Then the verse talks about the one who is God conscious or fears God's punishment, or the one who has taqwa, restrains himself from committing sins or transgressing while keeping oneself from unwarranted temptations. Living in a society means encountering these temptations head on and restraining oneself. It's like a runaway train who has lost its brakes. It can and will strike anything on its path and eventually collide and crash to its destruction and demise of its passengers. Taqwa is the brake in every human being that must be applied when encountering danger. Some people do apply this brake and some don't. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib was asked, how do you define taqwa? He said it is like walking in a desert full of thorns, but walking barefoot. You must raise your clothes up a bit and watch where you put your foot, watch your step. These temptations can come in the form of wealth, power, fame, lust, etc. Next verse continues about the one who also believes or testifies to goodness or to the best. The husna is an attribute meaning the best. If the ultimate truth is about success in hereafter life, then the verse says one who believes has a conviction or testifies to the truth of the ultimate good. The best refers to the best outcome in hereafter, and alternatively could be the words of Allah. In other words, one who believes in an ideology which is synonymous with ultimate good has indeed done his best to purify himself, seeking right guidance. What is then the outcome of what he believes and does in action as a result of such belief and his own free will? Next verse answers, فَسَنُيَسِّرْهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. We shall ease his way toward ease. The verse starts with fa and sin, meaning as a result of all the above, and soon we shall smooth his way to perfect ease. Allah will prepare him for a life of ease, internally and externally, as some have said. He whose path to perfect ease and comfort is made smooth by Allah achieves this great goal in this life without difficulty. He lives in ease. Some have said as a result of taqwa, Allah conditions a person to perform noble acts without difficulty. By practicing generosity, self-sacrifice, taqwa, self-control, and conviction to do good deeds, ease becomes characteristic of his movement, action, and handling of all things and situations. Success and being content become the distinctive mark of his life in all aspects. He attains the highest grade of all in the sense that he joins the Prophet as a recipient of God's promise to his messenger mentioned in the Quran when he says, وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. We shall smooth your way to perfect ease, in chapter 87. Next several verses describe the opposite side. وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى. But as for he who is miserly and deemed himself free of need. Here the word bakhla is the opposite of a'ta, mentioned in verse 5. Also within the verse itself, there's again a pair that go together, miserly and self-sufficient, from God and faith. وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and denies the best, and rejects the best of values and deeds, and ultimate reward in hereafter, as we spoke. Meaning, he is not only verbally rejecting the best, but also shows it through his actions. فَسَيُنَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى, we shall then facilitate hardship for him. Again, fasa in the beginning of the verse means as a result of the above, the earlier verse, they soon shall have hardship or difficult path going forward, which is God's law in operation in this world. That is why he attributes it to himself, because his laws are part of his creation. Summarizing the last three verses, he who sacrifices nothing of himself or his wealth professes that he is in no need of his Lord or his guidance, and disbelieves in his message and religion, makes himself vulnerable to evil. In doing so, he deserves that everything become hard for him. Hence, Allah Azza wa Jal makes his path easy toward affliction and hardship. God makes every stride he takes hard and drives him away from the path of right guidance and leaves him to travel path of misery, although he may imagine himself to be taking the road to success. Eventually, when he goes down to his grave, he can make no use of the wealth he has hoarded, accumulated over years of his life. And in the next verse, 11 says, وَمَا يُغْنِي عَنْهُ مَالُهُ إِذَا تَرَدَّى, and what will his wealth avail him when he falls? Taradda comes from the root word taraddi, means falling. In other place, in the same word is used in the Quran, that about the animal when he falls, crashes from somewhere high, and he dies, he's forbidden to be eaten. Here it says that his wealth, what is his wealth is going to gain him? Because usually this kind of people, which includes misers mentioned earlier, boast about their material wealth or fame or positions, beyond which they think they do not need to rely on anyone else. I got money, I don't need anything else. They are so preoccupied with their self-indulgence that they seldom think about others, nor the virtues mentioned, and certainly not about hereafter. They think with their money or power or fame, they can buy their way through anything. The despotic rulers, the tyrants, think with their military and finances, they can force their way through anything. However, they will eventually fall and die. Nothing, including their wealth, can help them at their demise. They never ask themselves what would be the use of their wealth after they have died. It is that very wealth that has caused him to imagine himself in no need of God or his guidance. What will his wealth avail him when he goes down to his grave? Verse 11. Facilitating evil and sin is the same as facilitating the way to affliction and difficulty, even though the sinful may be successful and prosperous in this life. In final analysis, is there any affliction worse than hell? Indeed, hell is affliction itself. Thus, the first part of the surah ends having made clear that there are only two ways, two paths for all mankind at all times and in all places. All humanity forms into two parties under two headings, as numerous as their attitudes and beliefs may be. We now talk about the second part, which states the fate of each group mentioned in the first part. It emphasizes firstly that the end and reward of each group is fair and inevitable because guidance has been provided and warnings have been issued. إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا الْهُدَى وَإِنَّ لَنَا لَلْآخِرَةَ الْأُولَى. It is for us to give guidance, and indeed to us belongs the hereafter and even the first life. Inna alayna, it is for us, upon us, and some said incumbent upon us, means one aspect of God's grace and mercy to his servant is that he has taken it upon himself to provide clear guidance and is readily acceptable by human nature, and also explains it through his messages and messengers and by means of the signs he has provided. Hence, no one has a valid argument for deviation and no one will suffer injustice. It is for us to give guidance. Verse 12. Then follows a straightforward statement of the power which has control over man and everything around him, from which he can have no refuge. And indeed, to us belongs the hereafter and the first life, this life. Verse 13. In other words, it is saying, O mankind, who have become two groups, it is up to us exclusively to give the guidance and tell you how each path ends. Anyone who decides to take the path of faith, iman, do good deeds, and have taqwa, Allah will guide him and make things easy for him. Verses 5 through 7. And anyone who turns his back to the truth and does not take hereafter seriously, he will distance himself further and further from Allah's guidance. Verses 8 through 10. The ultimate success and prosperity in this life and the next is in Allah's hand and belongs to those who follow his path. As a side note to those who say, we do believe in God, but we do not believe in religion, we say our God is neither silent nor indifferent. Your God sounds like a God that created man and left him to his own, as he gave them no message, no guidance, no duty, no accountability. We asked them, if that was the case, what was the purpose of your creation then? You can listen to my Concept of God lecture series for more details. We are free to choose our own path, and God's role is to show us the right path, guide us toward it, and warn us about the wrong path. Verse 13 basically is saying, he's the first and he's the last. He first created and gave us special abilities, and he will lastly reward or punish us based on our actions in this life. A person who fully understands what is at stake and what is the final destination then chooses the right path. Those who choose the wrong path receive the warning. فَأَنذَرْتُكُمْ نَارًا تَلَظَّى لَا يَصْلَاهَا إِلَّا الْأَشْقَى الَّذِي كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. So I warn you of the blazing fire, which none shall have to endure except the most wretched who denies the truth and turns away. Verse 14 starts again with fa, which means it follows the earlier verses, hence warning people about the blazing fire, which is the direct result of their actions. By way of elaboration on the two facts just mentioned, namely God's provision of guidance and that to him belongs his life and hereafter, i.e. the realm of action and reward, there is a reminder to us that he has given clear warning to us all. So I warn you of the blazing fire. Andar in verse 14 means warning, warning of upcoming serious danger. Nothing trivial. Of course, burning in hereafter is not like burning in this life where the fire burns something once and it is gone or destroyed. Here the Quran talks about burning that is continuous. Perhaps burning of the soul as well as body where it never ends. It is only the most wretched of mankind who are thrown in this fire. Indeed, there is no wretchedness worse than suffering in hell. None shall have to endure except the most wretched. Verse 15. We then have a definition of such a wretched person. It is he who denies the truth and turns away, in verse 16. Out of arrogance and conceit, he denies this message and turns away from divine guidance and pursues his unrestrained worldly pleasures. Here we have al-ashqa, the wretched, which includes the bad and the worst, as opposed to wattaqa, the one who with the most taqwa, as well as those with just taqwa. According to many other verses in the Quran, those with taqwa will be far away from danger in hereafter, not just those with the most taqwa. Hence, at-taqa, those with most taqwa, is the Quranic expressive style on emphasis. Every tyrant who commits crimes against humanity is wretched. Such arrogance and selfishness becomes the source of all evil. Some people outright reject the truth, and some may not reject but ignore because the truth means responsibility, duty, as they think religious duty holds them back from doing whatever they want to do. Either way, they turn their back on the truth. However, the other group, the first group, the righteous group, will be spared from the blazing fire. As the next verse, verse 17 says, فَسَيُجَنَّبُهَا الْأَتْقَى. And the God conscious will be spared. Those with taqwa, those who keep their duty toward Allah, will be spared from the blazing fire. And with their taqwa and giving, two virtues mentioned in the beginning of the verse, beginning verses, they put more and more distance between themselves and the blazing fire. And how do they give? The next three verses explain how and why. الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد إنه من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى. He who gives away his wealth to purify himself and not for any recompense of anyone who has done favor for him, but only seeking the countenance of his Lord, the Most High. He's the one who gives away his wealth to purify himself. In doing so, he also avoids becoming stingy. He does not give to recompense or return a favor to anyone. That's not giving, but rather exchanging something, like exchanging gifts. For him to give in order to purify, his intention, niyyah, is important. He neither has ulterior motives, nor inflated or idle motives, nor the need to boast, nor to satisfy any snobbery. He spends it voluntarily, not out of any indebtedness, nor seeking gratitude and approval from anyone. His only objective is the pleasure of his Lord, the most exalted. The term wajh, translated as countenance or face, to be the literal translation. However, it has three meanings in the Quran. One refers to a human face, as in, go take this shirt of mine and cast it over my father's face, in Surat Yusuf. The second meaning is Allah's pleasure or approval, as in this verse, verse 20 that we discussed. and the other is used to refer to Allah's essence, dhat. For example, the Quran says in Surat Al-Baqarah, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. To Allah belongs east and west. Whichever way you turn, there is the face of Allah, as translated. In this verse, by face, it means wherever you turn, there is presence of Allah, referring to Allah's attribute of omnipresent, which is in His essence, dhat. One could also say, in human terms, we turn our face when we look at something or engage with someone. As such, it wants to say Allah is everywhere. So whichever way you turn, there is Allah's presence, which is in His essence, dhat. Another example, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ. All things perish except Him, because He is self-subsisting, eternal, as in His essence. Back to verse 20, it wants to say a believer's giving is not even like the material transaction or trade, but rather solely seeking Allah's pleasure and approval. Now, what does this group gain following this path? What can the righteous person, a muttaqi, expect in return for spending his wealth in self-purification and for continuously seeking the pleasure of his Lord? The reward, which the Quran states, is somewhat surprising and unfamiliar. وَلَسَوْفَ يَرْضَى. And surely he shall soon be well pleased. The last verse, verse 21. It is the pleasure that fills the believer's heart and soul, animates everything in his life, and reverberates to all around him. What a reward and what a blessing! And surely he shall soon be well pleased. He will be satisfied with his religion, his Lord, and his destiny. He will be content with whatever happens to him of comfort or discomfort. This satisfaction itself is a reward beyond description. Only the person who sacrifices himself and his wealth for it, and who seeks to purify himself and to win God's pleasure, deserves this reward. It is Allah alone who can pour such a reward into those hearts which submit to Him, and with all sincerity and pure devotion. Having paid the price, the believer shall soon be well pleased. In other words, success equals to full satisfaction. But for the believers with good deeds, Allah Azza wa Jal says the ultimate reward shall be جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Their reward with their Lord will be gardens of Eden, beneath which rivers flow, wherein they will dwell forever, and Allah being pleased with them, and they with Him. Surat Bayyinah, chapter 98. What reward can be better than that? We think we live long, and the hereafter is far away. But the fact is, death can come at any moment in a blink of an eye, regardless of one's age, health, wealth, or status. Here Allah promises that we will soon be leaving this world, and the God-conscious muttaqi, or the righteous group, described in this chapter, will be well pleased with the final result. How did this group of people gain such success? They used their free will to make the right decisions, choose the right path, while the others did the exact opposite. That is the total message of the Surah chapter, which starts with stark difference between day and night and goes on to other differences between the two paths and the opposite outcomes. One might ask, why didn't Allah create only one people who are all righteous with only one path? The answer is obvious. Without day, night or darkness is meaningless. Without hardship, ease could not exist. Without evil, goodness could not exist. Hence, goodwill and virtues are recognized only when their opposites exist. The good is recognized and elevated only when evil exists. It is the existence of both good and evil that provides mankind with a choice. Otherwise, we would be like robots or machines doing the same thing over and over again. That is not the purpose for our existence. What is the purpose of life? That is another topic which we have discussed in details in other lectures, such as the one called Purpose of Life. Keep in mind, our characters, behaviors, and attitudes are shaped by the push and pull of the two opposite forces we discussed here. And Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed for us to deal with both and make decisions through our free will, while He has given us the guidance to choose the right path, in which He has also told us that both paths do not end with the same ending, mere death in this life. Rather, they end with two completely opposite destinies in hereafter. However, only one group believes and testifies to hereafter. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.